Hello, everybody. Today, I want to introduce Pinia for our application. And Pinia, as the way they describe it, is an intuitive store for Vue.js. It's type-safe, extensible, and modular by design. Forget that you even have a store. Now, the the goal today is not to learn Pinia as a library to memorize everything. Is we're learning as a solution for a current front-end problem that is the share state. So, what is a share state? Well, I think the best way to answer it is what happened when we need to have the same data reactive into different elements, and we've been doing that before. What happened when the same update logic is repeated in several places, right? We can have local state, share state, and source of truth. The idea here is that state is simply the data of the application needs to remember in order to work. So let's say a simple example and how Pinia work for us. So I created a simple application here that I want to show you. And I have 5 different examples that you can go through and verify. Let's go with the first one. And this is just a share counter. So here is a simple, we have 2 different cards that render the same information, but they're sharing the data about the count itself, right? So we increment one, the count gets there, double gets there, and it's replicated in the other one. If we go to the second card and we click, it affects the first one. And whatever we do in one card, it affects what happened in the other card. So let's think about that when we have the local state. We can use this in a composable, and then that composable will be in that particular component, but it will be a little bit like containerized to the component itself, and it still works if that's the route that we want to have. In this case, just to an example to have the counter in multiple places, what we can do about it, right? So here we need to have like a parent. Let's say it will be the website, and that parent, what we're supposed to be doing, it will have the value of the count inside the parent, and then it will inject that count as a prop to the component. So we will inject it to here, inject it to panel B. And after those get it injected, the other thing that we need to have is emit different um, activities, like emit the decrement, emit an increment, emit a reset. So the parent component that is the one who's hosting both will know what to do about it. And that will be pretty much the track. Here we need to keep record about the emission. We need to keep record about the props that we're returning and those particular elements. The cool thing about have that stored in a different place when you can inject different pieces in different areas. And I want to show that how it actually works in our counter. Using Pinia as a share store, we need to define the store per se and give it a name. And then the way that we use everything, you just define the refers, we define the computed elements, and we create a couple of functions and we return those back. So here we just created the count, start by 0, computed the double, is the count value by 2. Remember, this is just a simple reference. And then we have the decrement and the increment and the reset to 0. And all those get exported or it gets returned in this particular function. So we have a simple function called use counter store. As you can see, it has like a composable way, and it returns several elements. In order to have those, I have here the counter page. This is what it does. Well, the counter page actually doesn't have anything. You just have the header and the section. We have the counter panel asked twice. And what it changed the title and description. But that counter panel, if we go, is inside our components counter. We can see what we're talking about here. So we have still the title and description because that's is the way that we're using it. But we import or store from the counter stores. And then in order to use it, we transition our stores to ref, those ones that need to be ref, we store to ref. So we came back the reactivity. It's just a way to wrap it. So we had the count and double and store ref, but also we get all the other functions right here. And we can do just with that particular definition, we can use showcase the name, the count per se, the double count, and activate. And it feels and looks like local state, but this just get imported from the store where it defines those particular values. So we can increment, we can decrement, and we can reset. And all the numbers will be changes across the board. So one of the way to see it through here. So remember the way that we used it before, the way that it's supposed to be used before, how we've been handling. In the share component, we should have the counter state here. And then we need to inject those the same way that inject title in the description. And then we need to emit and handle those. Here we can separate a little bit more our concepts and what we need to do in our application per se. So another example that I have here that we can see that will be beneficial is to have a centralized place for team of preference. Like let's say that we have by preference light team and font size 16 and reduce motion. And this is my preview one. And it actually will change most of it, but this is most of the preview that will react for the changes that I have here. Right now we see that we have a light team, 16 pixels, font size, and motion standard. So if I click this, you can see it gets animated and it's actually really slow, notorious, the change of the animation. I hope that you're able to see it through the video. But if I change this to dark, everything changes to dark. If I change my font size, my body font size will get changed to, and even the size per se. And if I remove motion, you will see this actually is instant. But if I return it, you will see the animation right there. So this is another way to handle the benefit of Pinia is to have a centralized store for team and preference. And then on top of that, we can use local storage to save those particular preferences. Let's see how I created that page. We have the preference page, and the only thing that I have here is the team toolbar and the preview canvas. The team toolbar component is inside my preference team toolbar, and this is what it does. It consumes my preference store. If we see the preference store, is actually a simple function right here. Use preference store, define it, and then with the view use composables that we had before, I can use the storage, so we can actually keep this in local storage. It's a good place where to keep like preference like the theme. And I have the theme key, the font key, and motion key. I defined those here before. So Pinia theme is I change it to light. Font key by default is 16. Is the Pinia font size and the Pinia reduce motion as false. And then I can just compute. If my theme value is dark, this dark will be true. This is a Boolean check. Then set theme, I send the value. Toggle theme is as simple as if it's dark, change it to blue, to light, sorry. If it's not dark, change it to dark. So toggle theme. Set font size is just a value of the number. And we're just making sense that we're sending convert this size as a number percent. And then toggle reduce motion, just reduce motion value to true to false or false to true. And we return all the elements that we had there. Now going back to my team toolbar, we have the store to reference. In order to have the reactivity work in a Pinia store, we need to return the Pinia status or the Pinia store per se to a reference as Vue knows them. That's why we have the store reference function that will help us to do that, to get the theme, the font size, and reduce motion, and then the rest of the functions in the preference store directly. And we can call it as it is. So we have a selection with value light and dark, and we just set the theme with the value that we're changing in this select. That will be pretty much this one over here. And when we do that change, we just push those elements here. Now, where we can see those reflected? Well, we go all the way back to index. We can see right here that we are importing the application the way it's supposed to be. Let me go back to the app per se. Actually, it's not here. Sorry for that. Let me get back to my share. Where is it? Team preference here. Okay, here. My team preference, I import in the dark element. And if it's dark, I just send my dark classes. If it's not, I just send the light ones. That will be a way to do it. But then I define those through, you define those through the application per se. And here in the team toolbar, we have using the tailwind, the dark element. So by default, this use text tone 900, but when it's dark, it use text tone 100. So we change for a darker tone to a lighter one. And we can send those across the board, even for the reduced motion and things. How those have been implemented in the preview canvas. Let's actually show that. Let me close this on the right so we can see a little bit better. And here, this looks sounds complicated, but it's not. Use a helper function for the font sizing, getting the tailwind classes, right? The grid, this is just to show the elements on the bottom. This one, to show it or hide it. We're using the grid column in grid CSS. So one fraction or zero fraction. Opacity 100, opacity 0 is showing the details. And you just keep it as a local state. And this is particular a really good example because this motion demo, I don't need to store it anywhere else. It just locally utilized here. So you keep that state local. Now, for the rest, when I have reduced motion, transition known, if not the transition and duration, it's been applied. Here, when I have reduced motion, it's just showing the reduce standard for the text. And for the input class, let me see where that is. Right here, thing. Yes, reduce motion. If reduce motion is on, I don't have any transition gland, but if it's off, I transition my grid template and my opacity, and I give a specific duration in and out. Okay. The other thing that I did was for the input per se. Here, I just make it this as 1,000 a second to make it bigger. Let me change this one to a second too, so we can actually see it a little bit better. So show detail, you can see the animation right there. And if I remove it, it's instant. We're just playing with a specific store, and this is a little more complicated example, but I think it shows per se the elements that you need to have for those. How are those going to be stored one more time? Put in preference, in the preference store, it's just setting the values. and then we just react to each one of them, right? What other example we can have, like this shopping cart? You can see that I have different elements. I have a component for my order summary, and I have component for my cart items. And I can add an element. You can see that I can see the total here, the sum, I can see the details, I can see the cart items. If I add the same element multiple times, that one specific get increased. I can remove one from here, or I can remove everything from the cart, and everything just get deleted automatically. So I have my cart as a Pinia store, and then I use different elements in different components. Let's see those. So the cart is really, really simple, and that's what I like about this, about the store, keeping the value and the logic a little bit separated. So here we just saying, you know what? I have my items is going to be empty. Total items is just getting a sum. This is a simple JavaScript sum with the reduce. And the total price is another reduce. This is just to count the quantity of the element. This is the multiply the price for the quantity. That's why they are a little bit different, but it's a computed value too. So we have total items, total price. Add to cart is just a little bit different. Is check if that value is already there. So looking with the find element in the array. And if it's existing, then just change the quantity in the reference. If not, I push the product. Remove from the cart, I just filter out and remove that one. And clear the cart, it's just all the items get deleted, and I return everything. So you can see that it gets simplified, and it helps you a lot for troubleshooting, where you keep your records and your information in one particular place. That's what I wanted to show through here. How this actually being executed? Well, I have my product catalog, my cart table, and my cart summary. Let's go to the cart itself. So my product catalog, I have hard-coded 4 different products, and I do a before in an article to show those, and those are being shown right here. And then I have my button to add to cart. That's what it does. It's called my cart store, add to cart that particular product. And that's it. I don't do anything else. So the only thing that I need to use here is the add to cart. Now, here you can see that I'm using directly, but it also can be something like cons add to cart equal cart store. And then we can define it right here. And will be the same way. But because it's only one, we can use the other way around. And I wanted to show you both elements. Right? We know that add to cart in our store for the cart, you just check if it exists to update the quantity. If it doesn't exist, you push it. That's it. Right? Now, what about the cart table? The cart table is gets the items. And what is using the item is just a simple ugly table that does it for every row for the component. You just add the before for every item that you have. Print the title and the quantity and the price by multiplied by the quantity to fix, right? It have a remove that actually remove from cart with that item ID that been pushed as the key, and even push it for the line for this particular row of the table. And then the cart summary uses the same store, but here we're using the items, and total price. And it's reflecting those on the top, total price and total items, but also it do another before to showcase all the items one by one and show it the quantity percent. So we have 3 different places, 3 different components, and having one store as a source of truth where the information is stored and handled. and everything is reflected the way it's supposed to. Right? Another way could be, well, we can use that for call APIs, like this is just hard coded, but let's have this, for example, products API. As you can see, we have a loading state, and then it just gets some fake products out there, right? And if we refresh this page, you can see that loading stage being right there. Let me inspect this, and let me change my network tab to be slow 3G and reload the products. You can see the loading, and then you just reflect those right there. Pretty neat, right? Those are getting stored in our product store. Here we're using the use fetch from view use, and it's something really simple. We have the products, loading, and error. And we're just ending with the try catch. We make the use fetch to get the information in the JSON file, and there is an error. We just throw that error in, request failed. Because this is a try, the cache will catch the error and set the error value. That by default is nothing, they will get it. So how that actually works, let me make this a fake. I know that this is a wrong URL. If I get reload, actually need to reload those. You cannot load the products, try to refresh the page because we know that it's having an issue. And this is what we have through here. So when something's wrong, that is not being reflected. Let me just get back that here and refresh one more time. And the loading is still working. But just as a way to store the products. And then we store the products in an elements. That way, whenever we reload the information that is fetch products, whenever we click this, we don't lose the current state that it came. Let's say that our product changes for any reason. This will be just a refresh button, and then the product will change across the board. In order to see that, let's going back to the products API page, and we just have the product grid here. Doing the product grid, we have this one over here, and we have those defined in this particular element. Let me just see one more time here. Product page. Yes, the product grid per se. So the product grid, what it does is just have the before for every product in our products, and those products get imported from the store. And then we have the is loading anti-error. Something really cool is we have the status banner. And we import it twice because one is for when it's loading, the other one when there is an error. And we can define the status banner to be pretty much the same. And here we just have a dynamic class with the tone classes whenever there is a neutral or an error banner. You can see in this neutral, we have the stone as color, and error, we have the red one as color. So those classes are going to be injected dynamically depending the tone that we send, and the tone is being related through here. So if our fetching is loading, this will be reflected. When it's finished load, this will be removed. When we have an error in the status bar, and the tone error of the label will be pushed through here. So this is helpful how to have some status changes and reflected in one particular store. And last one that I want to have here, I have a dashboard. Let's say that this is an example dashboard. That doesn't show anything because nobody is logging into the application yet. Let's say that I have a student and an administrator login. And they have different type of elements. So let me log in as a student. I'm Taylor, as an example, a student. And the student can see just the announcement in my dashboard. And could be other stuff, but this is just a basic. If we log out, those are being deleted right there. But if I log in as an administrator, the administrator not only sees announcement, editor, and admin analytics, only visible to admins. So we have more information to see. And this is just to verify the role, depending who person is logging into the app. This will be real simple to verify if we go to the authentication part. And it's a really simple store again. And that's what I love about this. So we say, well, if authenticated if our user value is not null, it's as simple as one. If it's an administrator, if the role is equal admin, and we just give some permission, some roles, admin editor can edit something, right? Now login as a student, we set the user as Taylor, and login as admin, we set the user as Jordan. Here will be the fetching class for a backend, for example, to the register, to the login, and we set up those. And here, this will define, we here define the role. If we want to define roles in our backend, we just need to send those back in to change the role per se. But not only that, that means that every element should be handled. We don't see those roles applied correctly in the semester. I think that was a little bit out of scope and it get things a little bit more complicated. But of course, every time that you add a new element, a new component, you need to be careful and handle everything, because here you handle the role only on the front end that need to be validated for the backend. So just take in mind, right? And then that will help us to have our authentication dashboard. We have the login panel and the dashboard card. As the same as everything, login panel is just login as student, as an admin, and to log out. And we just do the login as admin and log out, and that's it. And we just find it. If it's authenticated, we show the current user and what role it has. That's it. But our dashboard is the same dashboard across the board. So this card, let's say it's going to come from the backend normally. Here I'm just hard coding those. And this is visible only if it's authenticated, and this is visible if it can edit, and this is visible if it's an administrator. So now with it's an administrator and they can edit, I can just show those through the visible elements. So here my view part is a before in the cards, my cards, but I don't go through all the cards. I just need to filter which one are visible. And here you send in a function about the visibility. Now, if you have this, it should come from a backend. So your backend will reply only with your card that need to be shown. So this logic is a little redundant right now, right, in a real world scenario. But I wanted to show one component that it has everything, only shows whatever is visible, depending the role of the person that is there. And that will allow us to have the three ones or only one. So what I will be doing here is I will keep the Pinia URL, so you can go through, you see the guide, and you can see the API, the cookbook, and every element that you have, the state, the getters, the actions, like everything that is shoulder, right? And you will have access to this application too, so you can play around and see the source code and see how different elements. Because in the next video, we want to be creating the project's front-end application that will utilize Pinia as a store, and then we'll push back and forward that information. But I think we'll keep those for the next week. For now, let's just focus, try to understand this, and as an assignment, do a mini application, really basic one, that you have a Pinia store utilize to keep those inside. And we'll define those on the text. So I need to have two or three components at least where we have the separation and everything came from the same Pinia store percent, and you can do something in your app. So I want to give full liberty right now and deploy it in Cloudflare, and I will have access to that URL and the URL for GitHub repository. Meanwhile, I hope that do you like what we saw today? We said a little bit about the example of Pinia. It's for a state that is only local, right? We need we need to verify this. Like it's just for local information that need to be kept in the front end. For the backend, it's a totally different story. You have that database for that. For a front end, you can react and do stuff for there. For repeating logic in multiple components and removing the confusion with reusable logic with shared state. So that it removes those. So PIN is a shared application state. Composables are for reusable logic. In real world application, the best architecture often uses both together, the way that you saw it in this file example. So when you keep state local, for example, when we have a preference. In the preview part, we keep it local in the motion for the showing or not the details part. Need authentication. You keep it shared when several components need to have access to it. When shadow more in the pin store, when everything to be centralized in one place, and you need to have a better troubleshooting of your app. Sometimes you can keep it in mini composables when you have a mini application, but use Pinia when things start getting a little more complicated because it's a lot easier that to troubleshoot. What is a getter? Different from action. An action executes something. A getter just give you that information back, and you will see that information in our view. We have the state, so those are the values. We have the getters, and those just to get part of the state, pretty much. And we have the action that executes something on top of it. Why not to solve everything with composables alone? Because not all applications requires this layer of abstraction. So think about where to use it and what are going to use, and verify which one is going to be the best approach. So, and this is mostly when things need to be global. One of the most example is like the team. When you preference for the team, you have a specific reference for the size of your text, your preference for dark or light, and things like that. It makes sense to use those. When you have different calls in your backend and use different mini elements in different places, it makes sense. So you have one source of truth of information. And for development, it's a lot easier for troubleshoot. So I hope that you like it. Remember, create an application, use the template, right, if you want to, and do a simple store, a little bit different, um, with a store state, of course, of the one that we saw today, and try to come up what we can do about it. It could be like the to-do app, and you keep the story in there. Like, I don't know, go different places, but then you need to use different elements from your store in different components, right? Provide the GitHub URL, provide the deploy application, and for now, I hope that you like it. Any question or doubt, don't hesitate to reach me. Happy coding, everybody.